Next, we've got Michael Robb-Grieco, Director of Curriculum and Technology Integration at the Wyndham Southwest Supervisory Union and a media literacy historian. So welcome, Michael.
So I am, I would say, third generation from Liz in media literacy, and your grandchildren will write your history. So I wanted to sort of give a little bit of my arc and how it connects to a few of the things that have already been said. I came to media literacy because I had a very prescient advisor, mentor, as a, when I was, for my teaching internship, I was studying to be an English teacher, a high school English teacher, and my mentor saw that everything I was doing, I was making music and video, stuff that I had done up to that point independently, and it just incorporating it sort of naturally into everything that I was doing. And she said, hey, there's this new English program at Concord High School, public high school in New Hampshire, where we were, that has junior English's media literacy theme. And I'm like, what is that? And it happened to be the first required full year English course that was media literacy themed. And I got there and they handed me material. I'm like, okay, I do media stuff. That's how I got my foot in the door with them and how they got excited about having me there. I said, but what is it? What's the curriculum? And pretty much most of the stuff that I got pushed across was from the Center for Media Literacy. And Liz's name wasn't on it, but I later found out that's who it was. So her influence sort of shaped my practice in the very beginning. And then I later found, because this woman showed up in the back of the classroom to like observe me in my first year of teaching. I'm like, why does somebody a researcher want to observe me in the first year of my teaching? But it was because she had consulted, I found out later, on creating that program, as she had done with hundreds of schools around Massachusetts and New England. And it was Renee Hobbs sitting in the back of my classroom, who I didn't know from Adam, and I was like sitting and doing my thing. And years later, when other schools that I was moving to were asking me to teach veteran teachers how to do this media literacy thing that I'd only done from my version and Liz's materials and Renee's framework and my colleagues, and I was like, I think I need to know more about this. I called Renee, and that's where our relationship blossomed, and I became a graduate student at Temple and got my PhD with Renee as my advisor. Ended up doing my dissertation on the history of media literacy because I felt through some other work that we had done with the Holocaust Museum and looking at trying to explain to them how to maybe do outreach to the media literacy community. This is what it is, and trying to figure out what it is at this point in 2008 or something like that, or 9, was really difficult because there were so many different strands doing great work, but there was very little common understanding and overlap between the way things were done, and the absence of history really made me feel like that was a place where we needed to do some work so that we would at least have those stories to read across. And I found that the place to do that I could tell a story of our history was Media and Values magazine, which ran from 77 to 93, specifically because of what was already said. Liz was an amazing curator and translator of ideas. And they were research. In that magazine itself, which wasn't scholarly enough, yet there were translations of Gerbner's work. There were translations of Michael Schutzen's work that they did, and sometimes the editors did, and there was, that appeared alongside conversations with media industry professionals, alongside educators, activists, media reformers, all polyvocal, all in the same magazine, because she believed all those voices needed to be part of what media literacy became, not just this is what we need to do to democratize media experience for the people, for children, for parents, but also that media industry people need to understand what those needs are, and they need to understand what the media industry's choices are being, the context that that's being made in. All of those things were part of what she tried to design into that magazine. So it became a really rich place that she changed way over time to tell those stories and to find what those ideas were that became what later became a field, right? And so that was really an exciting thing to be a part of. But my personal relationship with Liz really only came much later. Well, first, that mention that Sister Musil that you mentioned about getting the call and the tenacity of the voice and being a little bit too tired to take that on. That happened to me a lot over this process with the research where when we were getting Liz's archives. So when I said a great curator, the 72 boxes of things that were perfectly organized in terms of theme in giant boxes of stuff that came from LA to URI, now we're going to Temple to be in the archives there, Temple University. But I would get these very directed calls, and it flashed me back to the first times I met her at AMLA in 2007 when she had that, flashed me back to, well, I kept this close to the vest with her, but I had a Catholic school upbringing as well, and it flashed me to the nuns who are my teachers, who had that amazing capacity to be so kind and listening to so who are you? Oh, you're a student of Renee? What's your work? How'd you get into this? And this like amazing first kind, and then turn and like have that voice of, so you're gonna do this and this and this and this, and because she had sussed out what I cared about, and it was an obligation that suddenly I felt like in my bones, and I was like, wow, all of the good Catholic educators that I had coming up had that same thing. So I never told her that I would have that upbringing till later on. But when I really got a chance to turn that corner from being shaped as third generation to falling in love with who Liz was when I got to do some of the interviews, extended interviews, and sit down and talk to her for that research. And I wanted to end with sharing one piece of that. And for me, that fall happens with somebody I admire. Usually happens when they make me laugh, or we laugh together, and it turns into a conversation. And that happened when I asked a question to her, which I was obligated to ask. I said, I know you've probably heard this one before and had to answer. What were the values of median values? And she said, yeah, we had to answer that pretty much every time I spoke anywhere. And I said, okay, so here's your chance to do it for the historical research piece. And she said, okay, well, it was, the values were really human values, and she went on to list a bunch of our pillar American democratic values, and she actually made reference to the Constitution, and I'm sitting there and like, She said freedom of expression, equal opportunity, freedom from oppression and prejudice based on creed, gender, race, sexuality, all of the things that we would think of as sort of underlying our democratic society. And I said, yeah, but for the first 5, 8, 10 years of median values, you're speaking primarily to religious audience, Catholic religious in the beginning, and then ecumenical across different Christian religions. So why this broad, American, why weren't you saying, stuff about the Golden Rule or making some religious references during this? And she said, well, yeah, that was our audience, and sometimes those references would be there, but I just felt like it was much broader. I was like, even when that wasn't the target audience, your target audience was, yeah, that and everybody else in the world. And she started cracking up like that from the very beginning. It was the world, right? And that she wanted to bring media literacy to, and she was listening and pulling in things from all over the world. And that sort of ambition is something that, and belief, was something that stuck with me and that I think is really beautiful and important. So.